think it's working. All right, super. So we're now working on all platforms. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We have a special Sunday session on the calming influence of art. And I think being here in Toronto, it's just the perfect day to do this because it's a little bit cloudy, and yesterday it felt like spring. So now we get to step back a little bit and think about the weather to come and the summer to come. For those that are on Facebook, if you have questions, just put them into the chat box and we'll get to those. And please also let us know where you're dialing in from as well. This session that we're doing today is part of a series of sessions that we're doing for our community in partnership with our partners who list their services in our women's travel directory. And as you might have noticed, we're not promoting tours and products right now or doing hot deals, but we do feel it's a time to step back from that in respect of the people who are going through a lot of challenges. But instead, our partners have really stepped up and are offering to do sessions like this and share their expertise with you, which I think is a really fulfilling way of learning about them and thinking about the future and what's to come. And I want to thank all of our partners for their support on this. We've had a lot of discussions with them about what we can all be doing to support and empower the JourneyWoman community in this time. And I hope that you will support them and you will support these women-owned businesses, because that's another mandate that I have at JourneyWoman, which is to help women-owned businesses such as Melissa's and others. And I hope you'll sign up for the newsletters and follow them on social media and just show what a community of women can do. So thank you for all of that. Oops. I also wanted to note that with all of our partners, JourneyWoman does not receive any commission or anything like that for anything sold. So this is truly an effort to support and empower each other. And everyone that's participating in these sessions, and we have a few more to come in the weeks to come, are all aligned with our view of authentic travel and this idea of being curious and our desire to seek, learn, and teach. So today I think we're going to really learn a lot and hopefully be able to help and teach each other in the future. Let me introduce Melissa, and she'll introduce you to her fabulous studio that's sitting behind her. We're really fortunate to have her with us today. She is an internationally published artist and author. She's written several books. She does goddess cards, and she's truly prolific. I've spent some time looking at everything she has on her website, and I'm amazed not only by her thriving business that she's created, but also her own story to empower herself and other women through her art. She's based in Woodstock, New York, and she lives on a 9-acre farm, which I'm jealous of at this moment, with meadows and a reservoir and lots of nature around her and all kinds of magical things. And she has a beautiful art studio that she told me she spent the morning cleaning, so we'll see. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts from Syracuse University in painting and a Master's in Fine Art and Painting from Queens College in New York City. And in 1985, she was awarded a Fulbright grant and lived in Paris, which really sounds magical as well. She uses a diverse collection of imagery meant to inspire and empower, celebrating women's love of life, beauty, nature, and magic, with all varieties of paintings from fairies to angels to goddesses to tropical seascapes, and I love the mermaids as well. She offers painting classes and all kinds of exotic and visually stimulating locations. And today she's going to share some tips with us about using creativity to stay focused and calm during these turbulent times. So thank you, Melissa, so much for being so generous with your time today.
My pleasure.
I just had a few quick questions for you, and then we'll jump right into things. But wanted to ask you what your experience is like during COVID-19. You're obviously in a beautiful remote place. Share some of that with us. Tell us what it's like.
I have to be honest with that. For me, it's not that it's really not too different from my regular everyday life, because I am pretty much of a hermit. A lot of artists tend to be. So my daily life is not that much different. I love to dance and do Zumba, so I can't go to the gym and be with my women and dancing, and men, but there's only one. Truly, it has not been that different. I mean, I have had to ramp up some of my business life because, I do tours and retreats. I do workshops here at my studio. And so those things are not happening right now. So I've been I'd like to be spending more time making art, but I've actually been spending more time kind of creating some online platforms and classes so that I'll be able to reach my students that way. But everyday life, maybe cooking a little bit more. I'm very grateful to have my 9 acres, although it's a lot to keep up. It's not a farm, but it's a beautiful property. And I do feel so blessed that I can go outside whenever I want. And I know so many people are kind of holed up in studio apartments in cities, and I've been there and done that, but I wouldn't want to be doing a pandemic in one. So that's how it is for me.
That's great. And your art's very specific. It's both spiritual, it's creative. How did that develop, and what inspired you to tap into that within yourself?
Oh, I could take the whole session talking about that, but I was always interested in kind of the other realms, the worlds between the worlds, my whole life. And I've also always been an artist my whole life. So when I was painting and drawing in my early 20s, I had a really kind of profound spiritual awakening. And I wanted to paint about it. And I was in graduate school and I was trying to paint about it. And I was doing all these hokey paintings and putting glitter on them and trying to capture some of the things that I was seeing in my mind's eye and in my visions, and not doing a very good job at it. So I was put on probation. So in order to get out of graduate school, I did what I had to do. But I was very interested in all the faculties that we have that we don't use. So after I had my Fulbright grant to go to Paris, I came back to the States and I went to Barbara Brennan's hands-on healing school, which is now very, very large, but back then it was just 12 people in a class with Barbara. And I was very involved with that, and I really enjoyed doing the hands-on healing. And I did want to find a way to incorporate my art with that world, and I didn't know how to do it. And at that point in time, I didn't have the time and the money and the energy to do everything. So I thought, well, when I'm old, like 50, I can go back to that world. I don't have to save the world just because I do have these abilities. But then since then, I've learned everybody's got those abilities and we just don't use them. So I kind of put that aside and I thought, I'll go back to that later. So that is pretty much what's happened. And I wanted to find a way to put that world into my art. So I started what turned out to be a greeting card line and went into other products. And there's a Women in Magic series and a Women in Nature, Women in Cats, Women in Meditation, Cycles of the Moon, Shamanic Visions, a lot of different series. And I was creating images to go into those series for this greeting card company and also for myself. Mm-hmm. And these are not the only things that I paint. I mean, I like to paint traditional landscapes and seascapes. And when I travel, for me, that's a really primo time to make my art, because for all of you out there, you're probably all travelers and you know how exciting it is to be in in another world and see something different. So that always really inspires me too. And I think some people get confused when they look at my work, because here I've got this watercolor tropical seascape, and then I've got this very intense shamanic, 6-foot oil painting of a woman beating a drum or whatever it might be. So I kind of am all over the place. But for me, okay, I am coming back to it. That has been my way of incorporating my spiritual, for lack of a better word, into my painting. And for some years, and I'm still doing them, I was doing something called spirit essence portraits, and I was traveling all over the country. And I would do an intuitive reading for someone and then make a painting about what I received when I was tuning into that person. And I love doing those, but I did a lot of them, and I was traveling a lot to do those. And for me, it was a great way to combine travel and art and spirituality. So that was an incarnation that lasted for maybe 8 years or so, and now kind of slowing down some with that. So I do feel like I'm happy with the way that I've connected everything.
Yeah. And these times that we're going through, I imagine you've seen an increased interest in kind of the spiritual side of things, and as we try to tap into things that have deeper meaning right now.
What I see in terms of people that I'm connected to on Facebook, because the people that are aware of what I do and who I am, they are already seekers. So they're kind of already on the path. And what I'm seeing in mainstream world are people that are looking for ways to find comfort and some stress relief. And hopefully a lot of people are opening and going within in a deeper way than before this whole episode. I mean, that could be one really good thing that comes out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn things over to you now and let you get started.
Okay.
And hopefully everybody will just see you for a little while, and then I'll come back and rejoin.
Okay. So let's see, I'll refer to my notes a little bit here. So I wanted to share with you some ways that you might find to be helpful in terms of your own creativity, bringing some changes into your life that might be soothing. And one of the things that I do that I like to practice is shifting focus. So if I find that I'm getting too caught up in obsessing over, oh my God, this or that, or it's never going to end, and it's hopeless and like that, I like to use imagery. And I'm going to share with you something that I did, but you don't have to do what I did by any means. But I was going through a loss some time ago, and I found that I kept going back to the same old thought patterns. So I ended up, my card deck, I have a couple of, I didn't show you my products, but I will. I have a card deck, and this is a card from that deck that's called In Your Power. And for me, this is a card about being in your power. So whenever my thoughts started to go back to that same pattern of victim or, oh my God, I would pull out this card and focus on the image. And it was sort of like Pavlov's dog, whereby I was able to shift my focus, and it was automatic. So that was really interesting for me to learn that I could do that. So I kind of make that a habit now. And I had a print of the image, and I stuck that at the end of my bed, and used that whenever I needed to. So whatever you use could be just, and it doesn't even have to be visual, whatever it could be for you. And sometimes I use affirmations. There was a woman who created this card deck. It's an affirmation card deck, and it's not, wasn't my creation, but it's my images, and they're all positive, uplifting images. So this is actually a painting I did in Cornwall, England, but this says, I'm grateful for everything. So the woman put, her name is Amy Sophia Marashinsky, and she put my images with her messages. So, I am a gift. This one's really sweet. So there's a lot of different positive, uplifting affirmations. So if I find that I'm feeling down or I need a little bit of boost, I'll actually use this particular card deck myself. It's called Goddess on the Go, and it's tiny. It's fun to carry with you. Another thing that I like to do that's for me quite creative, because I hadn't worked with essential oils not too much before, but I started switching up what I was putting in my essential oil diffuser. So I put in, you know, mixing up some tangerine with some lavender and seeing how that smells and seeing if that has any kind of calming effect on me. So I've been getting pretty creative with my oils and having a good time with that. Because I've got the space and I've been, you know, and I haven't really been able to go out to the stores where I could buy plants and like that. I went into the woods one day and I started digging up some ferns. I've got a rock wall behind my kitchen, which is kind of ugly. So I was digging up some ferns and just kind of placing them there and getting creative with, you know, with what can I do with this wall that just really drives me crazy, and just using what I have. And that I find for myself that if I'm feeling depressed or anxious, well, again, you know, I am lucky enough to be able to go outside, but to get creative with what I've got on the property, or maybe if I, clip this whole section of bushes, I had never even thought about doing that before. And it is another way for me of shifting my focus. But it's a way of getting creative in terms of what I have, and it doesn't have to be painting or drawing. I did write a book. It's called 99 Keys to a Creative Life, that was published by Llewellyn. And I wrote a lot about how we can be creative outside of being a writer or a painter or a musician. People think they kind of tend to think that the only things that are creative are things that are in the arts, but that's so not true. I mean, you can be a creative accountant, you can be a creative cook, and that's another thing that I've really gotten into during this time where I've been home more even than my usual. Just, you know, taking recipes that I always use and trying something different and mixing it up and doing something different with those. So that's been fun. And let's see, what else have I been doing? Oh yeah, well, you know, it's always fun to try and take your wardrobe and see what you can do with it. If you are wearing the same thing all the time, and maybe switching that up or changing your makeup. You know, if you're not in a hurry, you can experiment with your makeup, and if you wear makeup, and you're not going out, so you don't have to worry about anybody seeing you. So that could be kind of fun too. I mean, I don't think that I've never been bored my entire life. And when people say to me that they're bored, I don't know what to say, because sometimes I think I'd like to be bored, because there's so many things that I would love to be able to do, but don't have time. And a long time ago, actually, I was doing so many things like painting and making sculpture and making jewelry. And I realized that I had to just choose one, or otherwise I'd be constantly overwhelmed. So let's see, what else do I do? Oh, yes. Well, I mean, gosh, you know, if you like the idea of the affirmations, this is something that I do in my workshops. The little affirmation cards, you know, you could make your own. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of holding them and not showing you. Here's one that says, I am centered within my divine self. You know, you can make your own affirmation card if there's something particular that you're struggling with during your time at home. I mean, perhaps you're alone, or perhaps maybe you're stuck with somebody you'd rather not be stuck so much with. You can make your own card to help you pull out of that. And it doesn't have to be a painting, doesn't have to be a professional painting, could be anything. It could be collage. You can just write it out. Could be just pure color. You know, you could note what color might make you feel uplifted, and simply have a card with something that you write on it. One of the other things that I love to do, I like to keep a visual dream journal, and I like to do it in a refillable one of these um, because they're refillable. You can buy the extra kind of things to when that's filled up. And they don't have to be formal. I mean, some days they're developed paintings, you know, like that could, you know, it could be a developed painting, or it could be simply color, how you're feeling and what would that look like in a color. I always dream about being swallowed up by the ocean for some reason. So, you know, could be something very simple like that. I mean, all kinds of things, you know, it's endless. And it's a really fun way for me to practice working out of my head, because how do we take an image that's in our mind's eye and put that onto paper or canvas? It can be a challenge, but it's also really fun. And I love, you know, for me, it's really fun to wake up and have this book and open it to my page. And it can be just simple, you know, just writing. You know, I often will write on my images too. So that is something that I find, I think that right now, in my circle anyway, which people tend to be a little bit more esoteric, I find that we're dreaming more. So it's a really good time to have a dream journal. And you know what, doesn't have to even be visual, you know, just to be writing your dreams right now, I think could be a really great way of connecting us to our inner world. And why would we want to do that? I like being connected to my inner world because it gives me kind of a heads up on what's going on in my psyche. It helps me to understand myself better. If I'm going through some issues, might give me some clues on what's really behind something that I'm working on. So I love doing that. I've been sometimes rearranging my house. Today I woke up and I cleaned out a drawer in my kitchen that I've been living in my house. I shouldn't even tell this, but I've been living in my house for 23 years. I don't think I ever cleaned out this kitchen drawer. I mean, like I said, I'm never bored. I'm always busy. But I've been getting creative in my space about, well, how can I organize things in a way that makes more sense, that's more efficient. And I've been tackling something different every day or a few days. I mean, it just depends on how much time I have. But that was really satisfying to do today. And also really creative, because I thought, okay, how can I do this to make that fit? You know what I mean? We've all got those drawers. I like to make little altars around my house. I think there's a book, Little Altars Everywhere. I didn't read it, but I do have a lot of altars, and they can be for different purposes. So I think I will take you on a little tour around my studio. So I hope it doesn't make you dizzy. I'm going to pick up the computer, walk you around, just because it is a little inspiring to be in here. The painting behind me, that's called New Beginnings, and that's one of my recent ones, and that one is oil on canvas. Okay, let's see if I can do this. These are 16-foot cathedral ceilings. I don't know if this is going to come out. This is some French doors out to my meadow. It's a really beautiful space, and I do have art classes or workshops here, weekends, that are really juicy for small groups. That is my table, mostly where I do watercolor. And other windows out here. I've been really those are some of my seascapes back over here. Get a little. There's Maine, there's Hawaii, there's Florida and Connecticut. I hope I'm not making you dizzy. And over here, this is a table where I'm working on collage. And that one is a really shamanic image, but I've got boxes of bones I don't think you can see those boxes of feathers, all kinds of collections of things. Okay, and you can see, maybe you can see just how big that painting is. It's about that one where the woman's sitting at the window. That is probably a 6-footer. So let's see, we've got over here on the other wall, these are some prints on canvas. And this image here with the butterflies, that is actually the painting that most people have come to know me by. That's called Anything is Possible. I do have a whole series on butterflies. I like that painting back there. I don't know why it hasn't found its home yet, but eventually it will. It's fascinating to me how paintings eventually find their right owners. So I don't want to make you dizzy anymore. Okay, so I'll sit back down. And let's see. I think that's pretty much all. Let's see. I could share a little bit. More about my creative process. I don't know if you're interested, but a lot of people ask me what inspires me. And as you can see, these paintings are very different from each other. You know, there is a whole series, Women and Cats, and there's a whole series of just cats. And by the way, I don't just paint women. People have asked me that too. I do paint men as well. It's just that I got started with this whole company that was that became a card company that was for women, but doesn't have any, you know, I love men too. And there's plenty of paintings of men too. So people have asked me a lot about what inspires me, and a lot of things inspire me. I mean, travel really does inspire me. And it's just, for me, it's just about the most exciting thing that I can do. It's just as exciting as painting. So for me, when I put together these trips that combine, oh yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about those. The combine the art and the travel, that was like a dream come true. So I do have, lately my favorite trip is the one to Ireland, where we visit sacred sites, and then we may do a little bit of sketching there at the sites, but not always. Often there's not enough time, or maybe it starts raining or something. But we go back. I have a really wonderful venue that has a big room where we can make our art. So people can work from their photos, or they can work from their memories. You know, you don't have to have any art experience. And in fact, the group that I was supposed to be taking in May, I don't think anybody in there had any kind of art training, but they had been following my work for a while, and they felt they trusted me, and so they just wanted to come. And we've rescheduled it. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do this in September, but I'm not sure. So I've done some trips like this, a couple of them to New Mexico, kind of west of Taos. And then I did one at Ghost Ranch, Georgia O'Keeffe's place. One in Italy, been to Italy several times. I think I'll probably put one together for Scotland. And there's supposed to be one in France in September, so we'll just have to see about that. And anyway, so yeah, my travel inspires me. My relationships inspire me. Friendships, dreams, nature, all kinds of things. So I don't know whether you have, I mean, I could talk forever. I don't know whether you had anything else that you wanted me to share, Carolyn, or I could share. I do have some workshops coming up here. I'm in Woodstock, New York. I have my own Airbnb, but there's plenty of other ones around, and they're really nice, small, juicy groups of women. We share deeply. We do some outdoor work sometimes, but usually we're in the studio, and they're really fun. So if you're interested, you're welcome to join. Let's see, my website is melissaharris.com. And I think that's about it. Did you have anything else?
That's great. I'm just going to turn on my video again, and I have a few questions for you, and I don't know if folks in the audience do as well, but I'm curious how you get into the kind of the practice of creativity, and are there daily rituals that you do to kind of create space in your day for this, or do you just wake up and start going? What kinds of things could people learn from in terms of creating space for creativity?
I think it's really important to have a ritual. For me, it is. I mean, especially when I'm doing something that it's not necessarily the easiest for me creatively. For example, when I was writing my books, I had a ritual where I did it in the same place every day, the same time every day, and then I actually came to look forward to it. For me, getting in my studio is just no issue because it's beautiful and I love being in here. You know, I just get frustrated that I can't get in here often enough. But for my students and other people that I know, I do think, I mean, for one thing, if you are drawing or painting, I will say it's much easier if you're able to leave your supplies set up, because if you have to set everything up and break it down every time, I think it can be a deterrent for some people. But yeah, same time of day. I mean, but I find that people often when they come to my workshops, they've been away from their work too long and they're blocked, and it's really hard. Is that were you talking more about being blocked and finding a way back in,
I
or?
think both, you know, I mean, I'm a writer, but I do find that having a space is really important to the practice. And I just moved about a year and a half ago, and I had a room where I could do that. And I had things all over my walls, and it was my space. And then moving to a small apartment, I lost that space, and I'm not sure I've ever gotten it back, because it just feels like it's important to be surrounded by things that inspire you.
Oh, I definitely think that's true too. And the space, and you know, even your little, I mean, I don't know if it's little. I mean, for me, when I was writing my books, I was sitting there at the computer and I hated it. And I had to visit a friend who, her husband was working on my computer, and I saw she had her recliner by the window. The sunlight was coming in. She had a little tray table for her tea, and it looked really inviting. So I thought, wow, I never thought about using my laptop to do that. And then I just started showing up there, and I made it really beautiful right there where the recliner was. And I came to look forward to doing that. But before that, it was really torture for me to sit at my desktop computer space. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't inviting. And it wasn't, for me, helpful to do it the same time every day.
Yeah. I read a bit of your story on your website, how you were at university and trying to follow a bit of a traditional path, and then you had these other images coming to you. And tell us a bit about what it felt like to move from kind of what was expected of you to, and I believe you said you only had one woman supporting you at the time
Yes.
on this path, but what did that feel like, and how did you find the courage to pursue your passion?
It felt bad. I was, you know, but in the end, I have to say that I've always been pretty different than most of the people around me. I grew up in a small town, and I've just always been different. So I was kind of used to that, but it felt bad to be ignored, and my story to not be respected or listened to, because I really was disrespected. And I can't quite say how I made it through that. Oh, I know how I made it through that. I decided to paint what I knew I could paint, which were these life-size portraits. They were very much channeled, really large. And I liked doing them, but I had become bored with them. But I went back to doing them just so I could graduate from art school. So,
Mhm.
I mean, in a certain sense, did I turn against myself? Not really, because I knew what was inside. And I knew I'd go back to that, but I also really wanted to graduate from school. So I did what I had to do to get out. But, you know, in the outside world, yes, it's true that oftentimes, you know, if I was to explain the whole of who I am, people have found it to be a little off or different. These days, not as much.
Yeah. We have a question from Facebook I just wanted to ask is, how do you know when something is finished? Like, how do
Uh,
you Is it?
Such a hard one. It's, I think probably every writer, I don't know about musicians, but artists, we all go through that. So for me, there is a kind of a knowing, but I see this all the time with my students. They just, I walk by and it looks like magic. And I have to say to them, stop, because, you're going to kill it. And a lot of the time they do. So when is it finished? I think you do kind of know. And there are some pieces for me that I could paint on forever. I mean, really just forever. But, it helps me to have several different pieces going on at the same time so that I'm not tempted to overwork, because it's so often the case.
And for example, the piece behind you that you talked about at the beginning, how long would something like that have taken to create for you?
New Beginnings?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that has a really funny story. Really funny. I started that painting. There was no bird and no figure in it. I started it probably 2-3 years ago. And I walked in here a few months ago and I looked at it and I just thought, I could just see it in my mind's eye, the bird and the woman. And also it was a reflection of some things that I've been going through personally in my life. And I thought, it happens that way. I had another painting in here that was sitting around for 10 years that I didn't touch. And I walked in one day, all of a sudden, bam, I knew exactly what to do with it. So it's varied.
Yeah. I'm wondering too, you talk about the practice of meditation as a way to tap into how you're truly feeling. Could you speak to that and how important that's been for you to develop
It's been really important. Yeah. I feel like, I wouldn't be who I am if I had not become introduced to the practice of meditation. And it really did change my life. And I can't be, I would be dishonest if I said I meditated regularly all the time now, because I don't. But that's where I will go back to if I really do, if I am disconnected from myself or if I am anxious. That is the place to go, because as a friend says, it's always an inside job. And I feel like it really does feed my work.
Yeah. And what about the symbolism of some of your images? So just for somebody like me who doesn't know that much about it. So fairies and mermaids, and do they have a symbolic meaning?
I wouldn't say well, I'm sure they do. I mean, fairies. I mean, you've been to Ireland, right?
I have not.
Oh, you have? Oh my God. I mean, you can just feel the fairy magic there. It's crazy. I mean, one of my students that went, she claims that, she filmed it because anyway, there was a bunch of, anyway, you don't need to hear that whole story, but you can really feel it there. And mermaids, I love to swim, so of course I'm going to paint some mermaids. And also because I do have a publishing company and I have these collections of work, I know that people like to see those. So yes, I've got angels and I have fairies and I have mermaids. But for me, symbolically, I guess, it's not that I just like magic in general. So to me, they're all magical.
Yeah. And then the places, in terms of being inspired in some of the places that you've gone to, something that we often do is we'll take photographs and then we'll come back and paint them, for example. But what are your sources of inspiration? Where do you find things that inspire you?
You mean the physical locations, like, the places? Or
just even, non-phically, I guess.
I've got a whole body of work. It's my Sacred Erotic Intimacy Gallery. So I had done an artist.
Sounds like another webinar.
Yeah, I did that. I had just gone through a breakup and I had to process that. I was on an artist residence in Virginia. So, some of the paintings are 6-foot oil paintings. Oh, I wish I had one. I could, yeah. Anyway, they're huge. They're beautiful, beautiful paintings, but deep and intense. And some of them were sad, but it was what I had to do. And I was there for a month and that's all I did. So I painted it out of my system. And another time I had an artist residence where my mother had just passed. and I did a series of collages about death. And so that was my way of moving through her, some of my grief during that time. And then the other ones, I can be in the middle of a series, but then be totally inspired by something different. So comes from all, and I have to stop. And for me, I need to, okay, you didn't, I'm not answering your question too well, but yeah, relationships, butterflies, cat, things that I love, I paint the things that I love.
For those of us who may have no painting ability or even drawing ability, I find that kind of intimidating to even start to think about painting anything. I think I can do a circle and a line, and that's probably about it. But what are the steps to help somebody get started? Do you need to have some kind of ability, or can you develop it and learn it?
I've seen both. I've had people come to my classes that are just, they just wing it. They just come with a friend. They haven't picked up a paintbrush before, and they are more fun to work with. And I think they're easier on themselves because they don't have expectations, because they have never done it. And they just can relax and have fun. And it's a really beautiful thing. People who have had a little bit of training and then try to come, or they're coming back to it, can be kind of difficult. And you know what, I think it depends. One of the things that I love doing is watching how people's personalities relate to how they approach their art or their life, because it's all one thing to me. So some people need the structure of taking a class, and they will thrive and grow in that environment. They need to know how to get from A to B. Other people, I have one woman that I'm thinking of in particular, they'll just come and they don't want to be slowed down by learning to draw first. They want to take that big paintbrush with lots of red paint on it and just splash it on there and go. So those people don't want to go through the steps of learning how to make correct anatomy or proportion or composition. And if they're okay with that, fine. Sometimes they get to a certain point where they realize, oh, I should back up, but maybe they don't have the personality to do it. So it's kind of an individual question. I think with writing, maybe it would be the same thing. One writer's not going to write, their process is going to be completely different from another writer's. So I like to respect that. And I think that's why people enjoy my classes, because I do respect that. I'm not going to make everybody work in the same way. And if they don't like an assignment that I've given, then they shouldn't do it, because they have to do what's going to propel them forward.
Yeah. Do you think that the pandemic has created a different kind of, sensibility or respect for art? Do you see more people engaging in art now than you did, a few months ago?
Not yet. The people that I am connected with, I think they kind of are coming and going with their art, because I think there are periods of kind of freak out where they're too nervous to make any kind of art. And then there are maybe periods of days where they're more regular with it. So I think it's early to say what is the norm. I don't think there's a good deal of consistency right now for many artists, because a lot of artists, it depends on what they're doing for income, but maybe their whole lives have stopped because they have to worry about that and they can't get to their art. Or maybe they have the income, but they're just too kind of angst. I have a friend in Paris who she's a great artist, and she's her recent painting, she's got skeletons walking on a tightrope. And so, I'm real curious to see what that painting is going to come out looking like. She lives right across from Notre Dame. So right after that whole incident, and she had been painting Notre Dame for a couple of years. So she has all these beautiful paintings of Notre Dame, and now it is no more. So it's like, wow, so
yeah,
we process how we have to process.
Yeah. And like all creative pursuits, it's really just about taking that first step and just starting. It's not about perfection all the time. It's just about doing it, right?
That's it right there in a nutshell. And so, I enjoy helping people to get to that first step, because they are intimidated.
How long would you say it takes somebody to kind of settle into, I ask because I'm taking Spanish lessons, and I'm told after 5 weeks I'll be pretty far along. So how long would you say just stick with it? If you're going to try this and you're going to order some supplies online, or even just try drawing, how long do you think it takes to kind of get comfortable with at least that initial stage?
That's also such an individual question. I mean, if the person's showing up every day, it could be a week. If they're showing up, I mean, I have had a woman come here, and actually she's come twice, and she's cried off and on during the process because she wanted to create her whole life, but she was intimidated, and it took her, she's in her 60s, and she didn't tell anybody that she was coming here to do that. So it was just such a huge thing. So for her, watching her in her process is very slow. So there isn't a formula. And I'm surprised actually that somebody said that to you about your Spanish too, because I don't know, I would think everybody would be different.
Yes, well, some of us are slow learners.
Myself.
So we'll see. But anyways, I don't know if there are any other questions that are coming in at the moment. This has been a great discussion though, and I think inspiring for just this idea of just try, right? And
yes, just try. And all the other ways that we are being creative other than just painting and drawing, and how we use that right now.
Well, I've heard of so many people that are starting to paint and draw and all kinds of new hobbies and things. It's kind of like a time when you've had all these things you've always thought you or these things that you wanted to do, and time was the excuse not to do them. And now we really have no excuses to really look into what do we truly want to learn and embrace. So it's a lovely time for this discussion.
Yes, it's true.
That's lovely. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for your time this afternoon. And thank you to all of you who joined us both on Facebook and Zoom. I just want to remind you, we have another session coming up Tuesday night of this week with some of our original solo travelers. And that's going to be a fun one. They have lots of great stories to tell, kind of a raucous group, I think I would call them. So you'll be hearing more about that in the next few days. And then some of our other advertising partners, we've got some Italian cooking coming up and some other surprises closer to Mother's Day. So stay tuned. And again, thank you, Melissa. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And I hope you now go off and get your paintbrushes ready and your pencils and see what you can create.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.